This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so welcome back. We are in day 13 session. So today the concept is regarding about what super keyword. Okay, so for that also I'm going to open my PowerPoint, which I have just now created. So you just observe here. First, you need to understand what do you mean by super keyword. Why we are using. We already had a discussion about what this keyword in Java while I'm discussing about constructors, constructor chaining. Okay, this keyword we are using to differentiate parent class, sorry, class level variables and method level parameters. To differentiate those, we are using this keyword. And one more is to invoke the current class constructors, whether it might be default constructor or parameterized constructor. You are going to use this keyword. So we have two purposes. Those things I have already told you in the concept of constructors concept. So if anybody didn't go through that, you just try to like what refer that okay playlist constructors video session, so that you'll get the clarity. So now, since after inheritance we don't have one class, we may have like more than one class, and that too with parent child relation. So obviously you will get okay one kind of requirement. But before we are discussing this super, I wanted to like what show you the problem. Okay, for this let me try to like what create under src, try to like what create one package com.jsc.super. But when I'm using this super, okay, so invalid package name, because super is not a valid Java. Super is available as a Java keyword, sir. You can't give any keyword as a package name. So that is the reason we are getting the error. So that is the reason I'm adding one more R. If you want to like what give any other package name, yes, you can give. But I'm just for identification purpose, I'm just giving you like com.jsc.super. Two R's I'm giving. If you are giving only one R, it can be considered as a predefined Java reserved keyword. With that, we can't define any your user defined packages. That is what I'm conveying. So that is the reason I'm just using two R's. Okay, let me try to like what define one class with A and one class with B. Okay, one class with B, where my B is extending from A class of com.jsc.super. So now my B class will become child class, and of course your A class will become parent class. Okay, with this. So because of extends keyword is going to be added. Okay, that's fine, sir. Now int x equals to 100, sir. So in the b.java also you may define one more variable with the same variable, int x equals to 200. Let me save this. Okay, now tell me, in the a.java x is there, in the b.java x is there. Now try to like what define the class. Of course it is an execution logic class where I'm defining the main method. Okay, now whenever you are applying any inheritance concept, we are going to create object of which class? Tell me, child class. So that is the reason I'm creating the object of b class, system.out.println of obj.x. Of course, using object we are able to access, right? So but this is not the recommended way. Of course, we are maintaining the getters and setters. So but just for understanding the concept, you try to understand for now. So if I'm accessing like this, which class variable you are able to access? Of course, in both the classes we have. So right now in my a class x value is 100, in my b class x value is what, 200. So right now in my class b, two x's are there. One x is from coming from a, another x is coming from, okay, another x is available inside the b class. Now you created the child class object. Now you're trying to access this. When I'm trying to run this, you are getting 200, meaning that whatever you declared inside the child class, that is only coming. Okay, sir. So now we'll try to like what apply this what we call runtime polymorphism or upcasting, anything you can feel. Okay, runtime polymorphism. Now when I run this, even though now when you run this, 100 we are getting, see, 100 we are getting. Why we are getting 100? So because I wanted to add one point, very important point as a comment, you just understand. Usually, okay, since we are creating the object for the child class, you guys are expecting the child class stuff only, but variables are not participated. Come on, please. Variables, okay, will not participated in, okay, in which concept? Tell me. In method overriding concept. Okay, so even though you override the value, okay, by taking the same variable, even though you created the child class object, okay, based on the object type, that variable resolution will not happen. Okay, based on the reference variable only, it will be decided, and accordingly we are getting. That is a different story. Okay, but now since we are taking the variable, but now, okay, I just added this point as an add-on, as an add-on statement itself. That is the only thing. So now the point is, okay, you remove it, you just create an object of child class, and you are getting, of course, child class value 200. But now my requirement is I wanted to access my parent class X also. How can you access? Is there is any possibility? So I can't access, right? System.out.println of obj dot, we don't have anything because we have only obj of object child class object. With this object, when you are trying to access this X, it will give you the child class value. But what is my requirement? I wanted to access my parent class variable, that is also X. If this is your requirement, meaning is, now coming back to the PowerPoint which I have prepared. So if you observe, super keyword is always we are using to refer immediate parent class properties, whether it might be variable, whether it might be method, whether it might be constructor. We are using super keyword to refer immediate parent class properties. So immediate means, okay, for the class B right now, immediate super class is A. For the class A, immediate super class is object. Okay, for the class B, I am not saying object is the immediate super class, because of class B is extending from the class A, and class A is extending from the object. So I hope you understand the difference. So what do you mean by immediate parent class? Okay, so if anybody is asking, if anybody is coming and then asking who is your parent, you're straight away you're telling your parent name, and you're not telling your grandparent name, isn't it? That is what exactly I'm trying to convey here. So in that way, to refer my parent class properties, okay, whenever both parent class and child class properties are same, whether it might be variable or method or constructor, when both are same, okay, usually when you are applying the inheritance concept, we used to create the child class object, but on top of this object, if you are calling any property, child class properties values only we are getting. But my requirement is I would like to access my parent class properties also. If that is your requirement, go to this, use this super keyword. Super is the Java reserved keyword to refer the parent class properties whenever both the class properties are same. So that is why you can apply this super at variable level, method level, constructor level also. So see, now what do you mean by super at variable level? We have already defined one program here. We declared one variable in the class A X. We declared the same variable with some value, and now I'm creating the object for the child class and I'm accessing. And when you try to run this, you will get the 200, that is your child class value. But how you can able to access the parent class variable also? It's very simple. So what you do is come to like what v.java, okay, define public void any method, get super variable value, get super variable. Okay, you just define any method. It's an after all user defined method. How can you access system.out.println of super dot, okay, what is the variable name? X. So this super is indicating immediately it will go to the immediate super class of this class B. So that means it will, the control will go to the A, and it will able to record access this X. Okay, so now save it, and when I try to run it, still we are getting 200 only, because you supposed to call the get super variable method, okay, on top of the child class object. Obj dot get super variable, save it, and when I try to run this, you will get both 200 and as well as what, 100. Okay, this will give you the child class variable value, and once you call this method, control goes to the child class method, and from here you are trying to call the parent class variable by using the super keyword. Okay, in this way we are able to access both super class variable value and child class variable value by using this super keyword at variable level. So you please observe the, okay, you please observe this particular syntax super at variable level. Whenever parent class variable and child class variables are same, to refer parent class variable from child class, okay, we have to use this super keyword. You see, super at parent class variable level. In the same manner, we have a super at method level also. So what is the syntax? Tell me. Super dot parent class method name. So for this also, I'm going to like what show you one more program here. But before that, okay, you just observe. Okay, but before that, a dot java, and inside the a class, I'm going to define one method. Okay, any method. It's an after all, same m1 parent. So this is the parent class method, sir. This is the parent class method. Save it, and inside the b class also define the same method. Okay, public void m1. So that means you are overriding, right? So whenever you are overriding, must and should, mandatory, or it is recommended to like what use which annotation? Tell me. Override annotation, please. All right, save it. So now define any other logic m1, and then we are going to like what just overriding the logic itself. And now go to the execution logic class. Now if I call the m1 method, of course we are getting the child class only, child class method only, because of you created the child class object. But how can you access my parent class method also? So once control goes to this m1 method, okay, once control goes to this m1 method, after executing this or before executing, it's up to you. Wherever you wanted to use, you can use. Before this statement also you can use this. You can call the parent class method. After executing the logic of the method also you can use. Anyway, okay, now after executing of this parent child class method, I wanted to call the super class method, that is m1 only. How can you call? Super dot m1. So when you call like this, come to the test1.java. Now both the methods are going to be executed. See here, m1b got executed, and after that, since we call this m1 super dot m1, from this method, control goes to the parent class m1 method, and this also will be executed. In this way, we are able to use this super keyword, okay, to refer the parent class method when both the methods are same, to execute both the methods. So I hope you understand super at method level also. Once again, if I go back to like what our super at method level, next slide is super at constructor level. So little theory is there, but it's very, very important. Usually I am telling, so constructors are not going to be inherited. Constructors are not going to be inherited from parent class to child class. Why? I already told you the reason. When it is possible, we are violating the rule of the constructor, saying that okay, constructor name and class name must be same. If it is possible, we are violating that rule. That is the reason constructors are not going to be inherited from one class to another class, or from parent class to child class. You may ask one question: if that is the case, how parent class constructors are going to be executed? So that time you are going to use this super keyword. That time you are going to use this super keyword. Okay, in the same example, so I am going to like what define one constructor. Assume one constructor. How can you define public a? So because of constructor always must be similar to like what class name, right? System dot out dot println of, okay, default constructor. Very good, default constructor. Okay, save it. So come to like what b.java. Here b class, I mean to say child class also is maintaining the constructors. Assume public, okay, b. You forget about method, you forget about variables. Only focusing on what? Constructors only. Of course, I'm clubbing all these concepts in one program. Okay, system.out.println of this is also default constructor. This is also default constructor, but inside the b class. So just for segregation, I am just writing here it is a class. Okay, sir. So now come to the test1.java. Now you created the object. Now you created the object. Okay, for somehow, okay, I am just putting this in the commenter. Okay, now you created the object for the b class. Of course, whenever you are applying the inheritance concept, it is recommended to create the child class object only. Whenever you create the object for the child class using this default constructor you created, so then control goes to this default constructor, and this will be executed, isn't it right? Default constructor b will be executed. Now how can you call? So now I wanted to execute the a class constructor also. Inside the a class also we have a default constructor is there. How can you call? Very simple. Super at okay, so calling, okay, super class default constructor. How can you call? Very simple. Super open parenthesis, closed parenthesis. That's it. If you are not passing any parameters, it is automatically calling the default constructor only. So now if I run this application, so now you see default constructor parent class will be executed, default constructor child class also will be executed, since you are going to add the super. So ultimately, are we going to like what use this super keyword to refer the parent class constructor, or yes or no? Yes, it is fine. So now one more point I wanted to tell you here. If I keep this in a comment, that means it is not available, sir. So now try to like what run one more time. When you try to run this, but still we are able to like what execute two constructors. Why? Because here you observe my PowerPoint. So here, okay, writing the super keyword is optional to refer parent class default constructor. Even though if you are not writing this super keyword, okay, so your Java compiler will add this super statement to every constructor in Java automatically. So that is the reason, even though if you are not writing explicitly, this will be added by the Java compiler. Accordingly, it will go to this parent class default constructor, and this will be executed. I hope you understand, right? So now one more point you need to understand. Sir, you may ask one question: when super keyword is mandatory? Yes, I will tell you now. For example, in my parent class, one more constructor is there. Of course, that is a parameterized constructor is there. Assume system.out.println of it is a parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor which you declared inside the parent class A. So now in the test1.java, now you created the object for the B class. Control go to the B class, and from here this super will be added by the Java compiler only to refer the super class default constructor. If that is the case, control goes to the parent class default constructor, and this will be executed. And after that, control comes back to this child class default constructor, and this will be executed. And what about the parent class parameterized constructor? That will not be executed. Like what execute, we supposed to like what call it, and accordingly it will be executed. See, for example, now when I run this, both the default constructors only will be executed. So how we can make this will be executed? See here. Okay, so once control comes to here, okay, how can you call? Because of right now you are in A class, so A class default constructor. So now you have to invoke which constructor? Tell me. Now you have to like what invoke which constructor? Tell me. Parent class, I mean to say same class, because control in the same class only. You have to call current class, okay, parameterized constructor. How can you call current class constructor? Using this keyword. You can pass any integer value, since it is accepting the int value. So now come back to the test1.java. When I try to run this, all the three constructors will be executed. Sir, you may ask one question, sir. So even though right now also we are not using this super keyword, but all the constructors are going to be executed. So, but when super keyword is mandatory, this is very, very important point you need to understand. For example, in my parent class, I don't have this default constructor. Okay, I don't have this default constructor. Okay, I don't want to delete it. I wanted to like what do you say? I wanted to keep it in the. Okay, now whenever your parent class does not have any default constructor, okay, except the default constructor, if you are maintaining any parameterized constructor, for sure, okay, you supposed to like what add this super keyword. Okay, otherwise you will get the compile time error. For example, right now Java compiler is not in a position to add this super. Why? Because inside your parent class you did not define any default constructor. You may ask one more question also. Sir, if we are not defining any default constructor, Java compiler will generate default constructor na? No. When Java compiler will generate the default constructor? When you don't have any constructor. But right now my parent class is maintaining one parameterized constructor na? That is the reason Java compiler is not in a position to generate that system defined default constructor. So for sure you have to use the super keyword right now to invoke the parent class parameterized constructor. How can you invoke? Very simple. So super of, open it, and what type it is expecting? Integer type. Then pass the integer value. So then whenever you create the child class object by using this default constructor, control comes to this default constructor, and from here calling super class parameterized constructor. Okay, calling this super class parameterized constructor, and control goes to the A class parameterized constructor. This will be executed, and again control comes back, and this will be executed. In this way you are able to execute all the constructors itself. But you need to understand one thing: when writing the SOPR is mandatory, when writing the SOPR is optional. Okay, SOPR is optional to invoke the parent class default constructor. Writing or using the SOPR keyword is mandatory to invoke the parent class parameterized constructors if parent class does not maintain any default constructor. So I suppose to like what correct this. I suppose to 1 second. Okay, here writing the SOPR keyword is mandatory to refer parent class any parameter constructor if that parent class, okay, if that parent class doesn't maintain any default constructor. Okay, this is what you need to understand. Why, you may ask one question, very important. So why writing the SOPR keyword is optional? How Java compiler is automatically adding this SOPR? Because very simple, sir. Default constructor is always available in only one form, so that Java compiler can guess it. But when it comes to parameterized constructor, you may define one parameterized constructor, you may define two parameterized constructor. We don't know, like, right? It depends on the requirement. How Java compiler can decide like that? So that is the reason. If you are observing my last point, reasons are default constructor is available in only one form, and whereas parameterized constructors are available in many forms. That's why compiler will not guess, will not decide which constructor is supposed to be invoked. So this is how exactly we are able to like what okay, understand this SOPR at constructor level. Okay, SOPR at what level? Constructor level. So ultimately my point is very clear regarding this SOPR keyword. We are using this SOPR keyword to refer the parent class properties whenever both parent class and child class properties are same, to execute SOPR class properties, whether it might be variable, method, or constructor. For these three, we have a different syntaxes are there, which I have shown you already in the program. You just try to like what practice, and you'll get the clarity itself. If any doubts with respect to whether it might be SOPR variable or method or constructor, please try to like what post your doubts in the comment section. Okay, so thank you.